The first video looked at how organizations design their structure to manage a multi-business firm. In this video, we'll now focus on how the firm manages the portfolio of businesses or the activities the firm operates in, as well as how it allocates resources across those various activities. This involves two steps. One, again, is analyzing the portfolio, and then two, deciding how to allocate the various resources the firm have, whether it be operating expenses or capital budgeting. And this typically involves what's called an internal capital market, where the firm, rather than having to secure funding from external markets, can use the profits from its and revenue and cash from its various divisions and shift those resources across divisions to the ones with more promising growth opportunities or more promising performance. This allows the firm to have a little bit better control over which projects get funded and which projects do not get funded going forward. Thus, portfolio management focuses on the aspect of what businesses should we be in terms of looking at the current business portfolio and look at which businesses deserve to continue to be funded, which businesses should we exit, and possibly which new businesses should we consider entering based on our analysis. Again, it involves allocating resources and then also helping to design strategy formulation for the various divisions by knowing which portfolio businesses exist and which ones need to be coordinated and controlled together. The goal is to balance the portfolio in terms of growth and cash flows. We obviously want to have strong cash flows and profits today, but we also need to manage future cash flows and profitability. And we do this by setting performance targets and allocating resources appropriately. The most common tool in using portfolio planning is the BCG matrix. And here you can see there are four quadrants based on the relative market share for each division and then the annual rate of growth for that in the industry that division operates in. So the goal here is to plot the firm's various businesses into each one of these four sectors. We'll start with the bottom left sector. In the bottom left, you have the dogs, which are basically firm has a low market share or a low competitive position, and the industry itself is not very attractive. Typically, these involve poor performance, and likely the strategy is to divest from here. On the bottom right, you have cash cows where the firm has a strong position, but the industry is not growing. Here, the goal of the firm is to maintain this position, but take the profits and cash from this business and apply them to either stars or question marks, which we'll get to next. But again, you don't have to reinvest much here because the industry is not growing, so it's simply reinvesting enough to keep the performance where it is, and then taking the excess resources to help grow future opportunities. On the upper right, you have stars, and these are businesses which deserve a lot of resources from the cash cows and from their own reinvestment. These are businesses where the firm has a very strong position competitively in terms of market share, but also the industry is growing rapidly, and these are ones that are throwing off lots of profit and lots of cash flow. And the obviously strategy here is to invest for growth. So far, the strategy has been pretty clear for the three sectors. The fourth quadrant, the question mark, is the hard one. Here you have a firm, the division within the firm is not performing well. It's low in terms of its ability to capture market share and performance. However, the industry is a high growing industry. And here the firm must analyze whether if by investing more money into this, can we move this business from this quadrant over to the star? If the answer is yes, then this business deserves some investment. However, if there's some concern here that the firm may not be able to generate a competitive advantage in this industry, this firm may not be invested, it may be held or divested to rather more efficiently use those resources. Now, the BCG matrix, again, is used to try and balance current cash flow and future opportunities by redistributing cash from the cash cows to the stars and or the question marks, and to try and move more businesses from the question mark status to the star status, as the stars represent strong profitability now and in the near future, and eventually those stars will likely drop into the cash cow status over time. The GE McKinsey matrix is very similar to the BCG matrix and represents another portfolio planning tool. The main differences are in how they define the matrices, or the axes. Down the bottom, instead of market share, you see business unit competitive advantage, and you can see this involves looking at market share, its competitive position in terms of its competitive advantage and core competencies, and then the relative profitability. And thus it's a little more complex but a little more accurate in terms of looking at these portfolio planning tools. On the left-hand side, instead of simply industry growth rate, we're going to look at the market size, the market profitability, inflation, etc. And so the goal here is to take the BCG matrix and improve it a little bit and move away from two simple dimensions of market share and industry growth rate. This is again represents an advancement to capture more realistic conditions in which to evaluate our portfolio. And again, here it's obvious that anything that falls into the three light blue areas on the upper right represent build, which means allocate more resources and continue to invest cash flow here. The darker blue in the middle diagonal represent hold businesses, where you invest enough resources to keep them running but no more than necessary, and you take the excess cash and put them into the build businesses. And then any units falling in the harvest area on the bottom left, these are ones where you will likely try to divest or at least not invest any additional resources into, and take all the profits and put them into the build businesses. Again, the same goals apply here as in the BCG matrix in terms of balancing cash flow and profitability now and in the future. Now, these portfolio planning tools have existed for a while, and the issue here is that there are some good advantages in terms of they are quick and easy, they are simple, they allow a quick snapshot of the business portfolio. And really they're able to apply to different views, whether it's a diversified firm, a vertically integrated firm, or a geographically dispersed firm. And they're a useful starting point to getting into more sophisticated analysis. However, there are some different disadvantages here with these portfolio planning tools, and as a result, firms have started to adapt them to their own uses, because both the BCG and McKinsey matrix are oversimplistic in terms of plotting out businesses. They lack some of the multidimensional problems that firms face. Furthermore, the way we define industry and the way we define how we view competitive advantage may result in some conflicting placements within these portfolio planning models. And then lastly, by plotting businesses separately, we may ignore the connections between businesses. As a result, we may end up divesting units or harvesting units that maybe have a strong connection to other units, and we may end up hurting rather than helping our stronger units in the build or star areas. Thus, while it's important to note these portfolio planning tools are useful, I want to draw your attention to that idea on the bottom left there. They are a useful starting point. Given these weaknesses and assumptions within each of these portfolio planning models, firms often develop their own customized version. This is a starting point, and then we apply additional qualitative analysis to try and evaluate the firm's portfolio and resource allocation. With these weaknesses in more recent times, there's an additional tool that is coming into use in a limited basis, and it's too complex to get into in much detail here, other than to say the approach uses or takes the idea of managing a firm's portfolio as a series of financial options or real options, and then we plot the options here. And simply it takes a more multi-dimensional view than portfolio planning. However, it introduces its own restrictions in terms of assumptions. So the conclusion here is there's a number of portfolio planning tools. However, they all suffer from the same or similar problems in terms of restrictive assumptions that may actually not hold in the real world. As a result, they offer some guidance to firms, but firms must apply additional knowledge and additional analysis before using them in their strict sense. Again, the goal here is to provide as much guidance as possible to managing the firm's business portfolio and its resource allocation, but these tools cannot be used blindly. They have to be used knowing what the restrictions are and what the problems may be in applying them.